That's allowable, and that's also encouraged. We encourage that. So don't feel out of place. Hey, wait, I didn't understand that. That's okay. You can say that. Or you could say, I disagree. That's fine too. We allow that as well. So there's nothing bad about it. The event is going to be, as I said, from here till 5. For those of you who are going to be at the buyers and sellers session, that's going to be in the bar now. That's where we're going to move to the bar. That's going to be at 5:30 for those of you pre-registered for that. Tonight's party is at a place called the Six. The Six is literally across the street that way. I mean, I can throw a rock at it from here. I mean, it's not that far. So it's called the Six Restaurant. As soon as you walk in, you'll see everybody. They'll be in there. And then tomorrow, meeting back here, and this is going to be the main room, and the Utter conference, which deals with, no one knows how to pronounce it, it's called Utter, and it deals with the chatbots. That's going to be where you see all those chairs directly behind you. That's where Utter's going to be tomorrow. Tomorrow's keynote, we decided to sort of combine the two keynotes. So the Woo keynote's going to occur after IBM. I figured I got the CTO from IBM come down here to speak about chatbots. I mean, I might as well combine the two of you guys and put you both in a room. I mean, you know, how bad is that? So the first guy to speak at 9 in the morning is like the CTO from IBM. How cool is that? So, I mean, that makes your time worth everything. And this guy's working on Watson and all this other stuff. So it's another world for some of you, but for a lot of you that are into, you know, what's going on, especially in business, it's a game changer. I think that's it. Yeah, the only sad news I just found out this morning was that Geronimo from Lead Signals, he's ill. He couldn't make it. He couldn't get his flight. Ear infection or something. So I may end up speaking. I'm going to speak on this Google Mail Launcher thing. So I think that's what's going to be. So I'll leave you guys to Steve and enjoy. All right?
Oh, man. All right. One minor point of correction, just so you don't think that I'm some, I guess, like a homeless vagrant.
I'm going to say you all the time.
I generally have, when I'm looking for housing, I've been 6 years nomadic. So it's not a matter so much of needing the person who I'm on a date with to house me. It's more that I very regularly had cat sitting, dog sitting, apartment sitting gigs already lined up. And the dating was completely, that was more like the, I guess, adding to the funnel. So it's constantly, every person I date, I usually assume that if that person doesn't want to date me, they might want to date someone in my network and vice versa. So I channel those dates into, hey, meet everyone else that I know. And so it's this constant cycle of tapping into people's wider networks. And that's been something I've been threading through all of my work. And we'll go into that in a second. Just explaining a little bit about, like, who am I, why am I the one standing here today? So in the last 6 years, I've been nomadic across 17 cities. At any given day, I try to keep about 50 or 60 apps on my phone, more or less depending on how annoyed my battery is. There are certain apps that are definitely battery hogs. Others are getting better. I try to limit myself to a date a week, just to make sure that I send out a lot of other people to date on my behalf, even for the dates that I've been setting up for myself. Just because the way that I've structured dating is for like constant data intake. So it's getting to understand like why people are dating in the first place, who are they looking to find, and then how can I connect them, if not with me, with someone who would better match their interest graph or their sexuality graph. Like what are the things that they actually want, because it's not always me. In terms of the way that I talk online, I constantly am trying to find out. It's funny, my conversations with people will say things like, what other apps are you on? So it's like constant user research. And people know this about me. Like I say in my profile, like I'm a dating consultant, expect weird questions. This is going to be fun. And I also write about my experiences in this industry from the industry perspective, like as a consultant talking to founders, but also as an individual who's actively dating. And forming relationships too, as we go along. So when I mentioned tapping into people's interest graphs, there's an interesting way that I've been approaching that. And if you've heard of the term super connecting, I like to think about what people, not just who they are right now, but who they will become and what they will need to become the person they want to be. And so in order to do that, or in the process of doing that, I've managed to start connecting people to a lot of things that they want. So it's not always just a date with me. Sometimes it's a date with a different person. Sometimes it's a new home. Sometimes a new job. Sometimes a new friend. And so I've done very many different types of connecting in the past. And it's really just been accelerating over time. I've been trying to build out different platforms for doing those connections. I launched one for doing it for jobs in 2013 and ran that for 3 or 4 years. Right now I'm focusing again on, in this case, AI and how we can use AI for better matchmaking. And I'll get into that later in the presentation. So I've been with Courtland Brooks since 2013. And for them, I've been doing everything from mobile strategy to product strategy, writing white papers, and interfacing with clients who have questions about, like, how do I launch this? What city should I be in? Am I using the right features? What am I missing? And the Courtland Brooks team covers everything from the early stage strategy up through late stage. You're trying to market to hundreds of thousands or millions of people. How do you roll out a solid marketing plan? How do you form partnerships across the industry? So that's Courtland Brooks. And Courtland Brooks also runs a thing called Online Personal Watch, which if you are not currently subscribed to, I highly recommend it. It gives you basically all the latest news in the dating industry. So that's everything from acquisitions, funding rounds, big scandals that happen every now and then with like perfect regularity in this industry, along with just the day-to-day, like which apps are newly formed, which ones should we be on the lookout for, which new features are coming out. It's been one of my favorite publications for the last probably 4 or 5 years at least. So let's dive in. Do we have any questions before we begin? Perfect. So I want to kind of give you a sense of where we're going to head throughout this discussion, presentation. We're going to look at the mobile industry and the broader internet trends as a whole, and then switch into the business models around online dating, move into features and conversion optimization, go into user engagement and UX trends, and finally, we're going to talk about some of the fun things that are coming up. If you notice, the chatbot conference is paired with this, so there's definitely a little bit of input from chatbots on the horizon. So let's go right in. So we have a couple operators in the room of dating apps. You have a lot of company in the US at the very least. And when you said that engagement is difficult, or it's hard to just like get consistent people following your app on mobile, in part it's because the average user has 1 to 3 apps on their phone. And when you have over 6,000 to choose from, it can be really hard to pick which of those ones you want. And usually the apps you have send you notifications all day long. So if you added 1 additional app, you get 10x the number of notifications. So that's something that's always worth just keeping in mind, that your users are definitely courting other apps as well. In terms of where those apps ultimately find themselves, usually it's in Match's portfolio. I know they tend to look at apps that are at over, I think it's 50,000 monthly active users. That's when they start getting excited. Or really, they won't entertain a conversation with you until then, at least. So there are just increasing. I think Match it's definitely approaching, if not over 30% of the dating industry in terms of just their portfolio. Maybe closer to 50. It's something like, as the industry goes closer toward maturity, we see more and more acquisitions happening, more consolidation. A lot of the new apps that are hitting the market are ones that have a really cool new technology embedded in them, and then the people who created that technology are brilliant, and typically the larger companies say, like, we want those people, and so they do these acqui-hires where they just buy the technology straight up. And so if you're not going for straight user counts, you can also go for the technology side, where a Match.com or a Tinder. I know Tinder, as of last year, was looking to buy up some AI startups because they wanted to integrate better matchmaking into their swipes. So sometimes if you have a particular niche technology built into your app, that can make you a ripe target for acquisition.
I have a question
Sure.
About Match. Like, when you, I guess going forward, when you talk about Match, do you mean
Match Group?
Match Group?
Yes.
Or do you mean, are you encompassing all of IAC?
Match Group within IAC, so
Within IAC.
not Match.com per se,
Right.
but the portfolio, or just the group that tends to gobble up most dating companies. So in terms of how many people we're dealing with in the U.S., I found two statistics. I don't trust that these are perfectly accurate, even though they may be independently accurate, that there's 54 million singles and 49 million people have tried online dating. Because on average, I think the other stat that you can find says that like between 17 and 26% of people have either online dated or have had a friend who tried it. So this is something where, because I'm pulling it from two different sources, we have a little bit of not perfect information around how many people are actually doing this. But we do have, I think the 54 million singles is the stronger stat. And then when it comes to other countries, I'm pulling in China here just because the sheer number of mobile users, there's over 700 million. And when you factor in just the ones who are of dating age, so like 20 to 40, and that's not to say that we don't have hugely growing segments in the 40 plus category, we still see that within China alone, there are just so many people dating. I think a lot of the popular apps have anywhere from usually 15 to 20 million monthly active users, which is just wonderful if you're looking to build a business in China. And there's still, I haven't seen too much competition coming from the Chinese market. There's a lot of just really huge players. And then last year we had Zhaoyuan, I think that's how you pronounce it. Zhaoyuan? Yeah, they were here presenting, and I think they had just sold to another company. I forget which one. Yeah, so like they were pretty happy when they came. It's like website fusion with dating, and they've also, I think, added live streaming, which is getting really big as well. And just the fun fact at the bottom, we are now at, I think, what is our population, like 7+ billion in the world of people. 3.4 of them are now connected to the internet, but not all on smartphones yet, but we're getting there. So in terms of like how online daters operate, it's not a very high loyalty category. So we usually see, as I was saying, about 20% of users rolling over on a 3-month basis, or at least 20% staying, I should say. So we have very low loyalty, relatively speaking. So what that tells us is we should make sure that we have an incredibly good first experience for our users that keeps them on, because usually if you don't keep them for the first 30 days, that speaks certain doom for your app, because there's a very low probability of them coming back, because if they're not on your app, they're on someone else's, and it's a very high likelihood that if they're on someone else's app, well, they may actually leave that one too and just keep moving on. They're going to have an endless stream of other opportunities available, and their friends are always telling them, oh, I just met someone on this app, and they'll try that one out and see how it works for them. Do you want me to stick on that slide for a second?
Yeah.
Go for it. And I could send everyone a copy of this afterward too. So it's interesting because these users, even though they may not stay on an app very long, when they're on it, they tend to engage a lot, especially for the popular apps. So the OkCupids, the Coffee Meets Bagels, the Match.coms, they're seeing a ton of engagement. So this is 50% plus engaging daily with the app. And a lot of this is because new dating apps have been adding gamification mechanics, so they can say like, oh, like check in today, you get extra points, extra beans, extra whatever it is that they want to give you in their in-app currency. So they're learning how to trigger users, and also the more users connected to smartphones, the more they can take advantage of push notifications from native mobile apps, and so you can do all the tricks in the book to get someone to come right back into your app. And in terms of usage by people based on different age demographics, it's fun to see that. In the 18 to 24 category, we have people increasing their usage threefold. So that means that just in the last 4 years, people's attention is going increasingly to mobile, and within mobile dating, they are putting a lot more attention into it. It's not to say they're succeeding, per se, but they're at least giving us more attention. And interestingly, too, they are not in a future slide, you'll see that they're not very happy. But their attitude still seems optimistic. Like people see that there's potential here. They see that online dating is a really good way to meet people. But as we'll see you'll see in 2 slides from here, the negative side of that. But these users, like they are coming in, they're spending money, vary city to city. I think New York's probably one of the most expensive cities to date in and to live in general. With the market itself, it was just, I remember I presented last year, and I think we were at like 2.4, 2.6 billion. We're already at 3 billion this year, so we're still growing pretty nicely. But yeah, if you look at this, this was a hilarious graphic that came out. These are you would want to see some green in there to showcase that the industry is doing a good job and users are happy and satisfied. The only thing that has green is Tinder, and that's value, the value of being on Tinder. That means users are feeling better about the value Tinder offers, but it's a free app, so let's be real here. Our users aren't very satisfied with what's out there, and that likely plays into why they're consistently leaving our apps, usually within a month. So what can we do to make them happier? We'll get into that later, because that's something that's going to take a lot of unpacking. When we're thinking of mobile versus mobile web versus desktop, I think we really want to look into mobile as the forefront, and that's been increasingly the case, and a lot that you'll see in this presentation will just further reinforce that mobile is the way to go. Native mobile if you can do it. If we're looking at when mobile surpassed web, that was in 2014, and I know a lot of apps were super bullish on this. Scout and Tinder, even OkCupid, were just so, they're very willing to say, and Plenty of Fish I think was the main one. They're just like, yeah, we hit 74% usage from mobile within the first, I think it was like 1 or 2 years of launching the mobile app. So it's clear that users are very much like they are on their phones. That's what lives with them every day, even if their laptop doesn't yet. And so we have a lot of people with smartphones in particular. So we're at 199 million. I think the US population is 350 million or so, in that ballpark. So a substantial portion are currently smartphone owners, so that bodes well for anyone who's currently looking to build in native mobile. We still have Android with a slightly higher market share. This one from 2016. Usually the going assumption is that you can monetize better off of Apple users, but there are just more Android users overall. So you can make the call. Usually you want to launch in both platforms anyway, because the last thing you want is for someone to try to meet. I mean, there are certain personality types of people who, there's a whole separate argument, like people who use Apple versus people who use Apple products versus Android products, and how they are potentially different kinds of people. OkCupid has done some fun research on that, although a lot of it is tongue-in-cheek. If you're launching in the Asian market, once again, like mobile is, a lot of people sooner have a smartphone than a laptop, so your best bet is just keep thinking mobile. And in terms of usage, if you look at this, it's kind of crazy. We just keep seeing an ever-expanding amount of time that people are spending staring at their phones. I actually think 3 hours a day doesn't even feel like that much, because I don't know how many of us, we might be a different crowd where we're spending probably like upwards of 6 hours a day looking at our phones, but 3 is the average. So let's go into some business models and what dating apps are doing to actually make money. So like I said, there's just under 7,000 dating and matchmaking companies out there in the US right now. Generally, what they want to do is get bought. Sometimes they get acquired through the acqui-hire process. But those have like the higher multiples, although I think currently it's usually like 3x earnings that dating apps go for, which is actually not super exciting. And that's why VC money hasn't been as eager to enter the dating industry, because they're not seeing any Ubers or Airbnbs come out of the dating industry. And so what you're left with, if you're not going to necessarily get acquired or raise funds from VCs, is just monetizing on your own. So that's one of the things I want to be focusing on in here. And so you have, I'll go into each one of these in a little bit more depth so you can see just like why I'm saying what I'm saying. The general fundraising climate in dating, like it's, just given what I've been following, you see maybe like under 20 companies receiving investment in a given year in the industry. And maybe there's some angels here and there for like the sub 500K range, but in terms of the like Series A, B, C, you don't see too much of that. I think Happen and Hinge are two of the bigger ones that we see in the last couple of years in the US market. They've been receiving a decent amount of venture money. But
where do you put the league in that?
I think they, forget how much they raised.
The last I
So like 10?
like 2.6 2 years ago, I think. I mean, I don't.
Yeah. This is not an exclusive list. This is just some of the noteworthy ones. But yeah, I think the League, Meet Mindful, those are both, I guess, in the $2 million range. This thing I made myself, excuse I'm not a designer, so. But in terms of who's actually getting bought, we saw one nice acquisition earlier this year. Meet Me acquired Ifwe for $63 million. And then Grindr got acquired in 2016. You see those at the bottom for $245 million combined in 2 rounds. So that's been, I mean, that was a pretty big win for Grindr, although I actually thought that they would be worth a little bit more than that. But I mean, that's certainly not bad. I'm sure everyone on that, it wasn't even a very large team. And they also built, I don't know if you all know, Grindr was built, I believe, for $5,000. That was the total cost of their team when they built the app, and they did it in not very much time at all. So it's pretty amazing that you can go, I think, and that was, I forget when they built, I think it was maybe like 2010, 2011. So I'm sure the team's very happy. And then I met the founder of JSwipe at a talk a couple of years back, and then like that was probably, yeah, it must have been like within a year before he sold. So I'm sure I should say hi to him soon. So yeah, but it looks like IAC is still, the dominant player when it comes to acquisitions. So let's talk about like what we're going to do for monetization as an industry. We have pay per download. The gaming industry has done this really well. So a lot of the methods that they've used is like, put up an app for 99 cents and then let users do some more in-app purchases once they get it. But you can, even a flashlight app, you can put on the App Store for 99 cents and make $1 million. So that's what the gaming industry has done a lot of. They've been switching increasingly to live streaming and just other models entirely, as has the dating industry. We'll get into that later. But pay per download, generally speaking, if you're a dating app, it will not do a very good job for you. For display ads, it's still a struggle to get users' attention in a way that doesn't bother them. There are some new models that I've seen in the last year or two that I put later in the presentation, which we'll go into. But it's still definitely a challenge, especially on mobile. You have a smaller screen, users who don't like to be interrupted with the flow of what they're doing. But in-app purchases, that's really where you're going to make your bread and butter if you're a dating app. It's through getting people to buy a membership when they're in the app, or getting them to if you do like a freemium option, getting them to pay for different features. So if you think of like Tinder, getting additional super likes, where you can like denote this person is the person I like a lot, and so you only get one of those per day for free, but you can pay to get more. Things like, I think they cut you off at like 100 likes per day, where if you swipe right on 100 people, then they're like, okay, settle down, no more unless you pay. So those are the common ones that you'll see. Going into a little bit more depth, this was Grindr's attempt at doing a pay per download, and it wasn't entirely terrible. Like they had, partly because Grindr's ads were ungodly annoying. It'd be like 3 or 4 ads in a row every time you open the app, and so people would pay the 99 cents just to make that go away. But it's still not necessarily the best bet. Like the growth is declining. It's really just something that you save for games. When it comes to in-app purchases, though, this is where you really want to think of who's doing it. In this case, in the dating industry, it's most people, most apps. And how are they doing it is a little bit more interesting because you can do it through a lot of different ways. This is an example from Scout, where if you want to unlock certain things, like who's checking you out, you can see like your profile visitors for a certain number of points. I mean, this is a graph. This is not showing just online dating. This is in-app purchases overall. But in the case of the dating industry, if you look across the board through the app stores, you'll see that in-app purchases are by far the main thing that they're using. And they're generally considered the future. Like that's where we're headed as far as mobile is concerned, especially with things like Apple Pay, where you just like pay with your fingerprint. Like that's the easiest thing in the world. And you're so much more likely to make a purchase when the friction to actually do so. You don't have to take out a credit card and enter. You literally just like press your. Sometimes you can do it by accident if you're holding the phone a certain way. So it is a really beneficial thing of going native mobile when you're looking to monetize. It's just it gives you the capacity to have someone's credit card already saved, installed, ready to go at a tip. So it makes for those moments of like, ooh, there's an attractive person. I want to see them. Oh, wait, I have to pay an extra $1. Sure, fine, let's do it. I just did that 2 days ago, so I know the feeling there very well. So display ads, like everyone knows them. They've been around for years. They're still not fun. They can be okay sometimes, but generally speaking, it's so frustrating to have to, like your ROI is just rarely going to be high enough to justify the investment, and you also have to have a ton of users before it's worthwhile for you. But there is an opportunity in terms of just like there's a lot more attention going into mobile, and there's still not a lot of actual purchasing of the available ad space. So I think there's capacity for innovation there. There was a guy at the conference last year who had a really cool innovation in advertising where like if you saw a panel of people's profile pictures, one of them would suddenly just start moving, and that would be an ad. And so it wouldn't necessarily disrupt the experience, but it would be, what's up? You came in at exactly the time I said disrupt the experience. It's perfect.
You want a laser.
Oh.
Yes.
I'm game for a laser pointer. But yeah, so the experience of his ad innovation was one of like, it's not like something coming at you, it's stopping you from being able to swipe or scroll. It's just like one of those panels just happens to be moving, and it captures your attention in an interesting way. I thought it was really cool. And then in terms of advertising, we're seeing it finally surpass desktop. It's been years in which desktop has been it's owned most of our attention, but now finally people are realizing that like attention's going mobile. We saw it's 3 hours a day, so ads are going mobile as well. When you think about ad type, video ads are actually really cool. And I think that Tinder has begun doing this as well. I know like when you're swiping through different Tinder profiles, every once in a while you get one that's, one of mine was like a really old man in really weird underwear, and it was an underwear ad. And so I was like, oh, okay, like that was definitely something that caught my attention. And they have done, I believe, video ads as well. So like one of the profiles as you're swiping will just be a video ad for like Budweiser or something like that, and sometimes for other social causes that have done. I know in the UK they've done a lot of work around incorporating social causes into the ads on dating apps. So let's see like a little bit more in depth on like which types of monetization are happening in which apps. So like that, I said that pay per download, I haven't seen it really outside of Grindr. And a few others, like it's so rare. The subscription or subscription fused with the like digital currency, those are still the most popular. So you see a lot of clustering there where you don't necessarily want to go only subscription, because not everyone wants to have to deal with the recurring monthly thing that scares off a lot of users. Sometimes they just want that one thing at that one moment, and so you just give it to them, let them pay for it. And then if they happen to realize they did that 5 times in 5 days, then they're like, okay, fine, I'll get a subscription. I'm clearly using this enough to justify it. And so offering both is a pretty smart move. And you'll see, Tinder has the opportunity to do that. I think OkCupid also has the opportunity. You can pay for individual boosts, or you can just get the A-list. So you'll see it across the board where a lot of the most successful dating apps are very much fusing the two. So in terms of what features we're going to look at, I just want to give you a glimpse, because I don't know how many people are actively on these dating apps and able to see what the features look like when they're in action, what these advertising models look like. So I just want to give you a glimpse into that, because if you're getting ready to build an app or you're thinking about how you can creatively monetize, then this is where you'll learn a lot. Some of these are actually from my experience, because when they do something particularly clever, I'll take a screenshot and just like save that away for later. So I know on Match where they're like, oh, look, you have this really cool person. They're super compatible with you. Go send them a message. And then you're like, oh, cool. I guess I can do that. And so you start typing the message. And as soon as you hit send, that's when they're like, oh, sorry, you kind of have to pay to do that. And you're like, really? Like, I just typed up this message for like 20 minutes, and now I'm fine. I'll pay you this time. And sometimes, like, if they don't have the pay just to send the message feature and you have to get a full subscription, that's when you'll be like, okay, I'll do the subscription to send the message, but I'm canceling at the end of the month. And so that's where you'll get a lot of those like users that stay for 1 month and then peace out. But it is kind of brilliant the way they do it. I'll give it to them.
How much was that if without the subscription? If it was just to send once, being that match was like $43?
They don't offer you at least at last I checked, they didn't offer pay for just the ability to send that message. So they're not premium, they're very much membership based. And I think they're going even further in that direction, where I think it was Match as of maybe a year and a half ago, or 2 years, they made it so that you couldn't even access the app unless you were a paying member. I think they were trying to make it feel like a more exclusive community, so it wasn't just a lot of bottom feeders who were just coming in, sending a couple of messages, then leaving, because that's not really a good user experience for all the people who are actually paying. Zeus and Badoo do a fun thing where they show you parts of the message that you received, and I've seen dating apps. Awesome.
Work on this later.
Yeah. Cool. So it's funny because you can tell a lot of times the quality of an app based on whether the messages you receive are all the same. So there's definitely, and you'll see later, there are instances where if you see the same message 4 or 5 times, a lot of the sketchier apps where it's just a bunch of cleavage shots and someone saying, hey sexy, and you're like, okay, I get it, you put a bunch of fake users on this site. But it's still the same principle, is that you show a glimpse of what it is that this person wants to communicate to you, and then if I wanted to go in further and actually read the message, that's when they'd give me that pop-up saying oh, sorry, if you want to read this message, maybe you can pay this much. If you want to read all of your messages, it's just a monthly fee. There's a couple other fun things that I noticed in the app Lovo. They give you, each of these different features can be monetized. Well, not the report necessarily, although there are separate apps for that. But different ways of monetizing. So if you want to, some users are super popular, and so if you want to add them as a friend, but they're popular, then you're not popular enough. You have to boost your popularity by paying or, engaging in certain behaviors that they want you to do as a user. Favoriting users is generally something that's not something they charge for, because they want you to be able to see the users that you want to interact with, and then they'll charge you right at the point of interaction. This is an important thing to remember when you're building, is if you just restrict everything from users, then they don't engage enough to ever develop any kind of loyalty to your brand, or even just enough engagement with the app to understand how much they want it. So you have to get, there's a fine line to thread where you have to just go right up to the point where they need it most, and that's when you put in the paywall, if you're going to do it. So in the case of Tinder, I know the super only having 1 per day, it's nice that you get 1, but that second person you come to that you super liked 1 and now you're out, when you see that other person, and I don't know if any of you are familiar with the power of a super like. Imagine you're a woman who gets, let's say, at any given moment, 500 people will send you a message. So when one person happens to send that extra thing that says no, I'm not just like everyone else. I've used my 1 super like per day on you. That means a lot more. And so there's a lot of some of my clients on the interpersonal side, people who are just coming to me with their dating problems, have said that what they've noticed is that things like super like, things like Coffee Meets Bagel lets you woo someone. It's the same deal. Those are game changers for them, because it makes the experience that much better, because then they can actually communicate, you are someone I care about more than anyone else that I saw today. And so you can definitely monetize off of those, because you get users right at the point where they want something really badly, enough that they'll pay, if not that one time, then potentially indefinitely into the future if they get a subscription.
So with the subscription, you get unlimited super likes?
I think you get 5 per day instead of the usual 1. But you get a whole, this is just an example of the Meet Me credit system, but they also have, I think, a separate subscription, and Tinder has a subscription version where all the things you could pay for individually just get wrapped up into one subscription. And so it makes it so users can choose, do I really have to expend all that mental energy every time on I want to pay for this one, pay for that one, pay for that one, or do I just grab the whole thing and not have to think about it? So it's generally a lot easier for, if you're building, to just give users that option, or even just make sure you consistently interview your users to find out what is the point when you'd feel most excited to pay if you had to. Yeah, so I was saying, there's this previous slide, it's the credits that you can use to pay for different things, or you can get the membership that basically just accounts for everything at once. So Zeus does a coin system, and so like they say like, oh, we have this fancy algorithm, we did all this work to make sure we had you like the mathematically perfect match, but you can't see them yet. Sorry, like you know they're there, but you have to pay to unlock them. And then they do let you say whether or not you wanted to meet someone, but frequently, if you actually want to engage with them, the way that they actually get you to pay is by saying like, look, you've engaged a little bit, you've said that you like them, but before you can actually message them, now you have to pay. And so that gets users really frustrated because they're like, I know they like me too, and I just want to communicate that to them, but now I'm at the paywall. And so you can either piss off users and make them leave because they say it's not worth it, I'll just go to a different app. Or if you do it right, then you can get them right to the point where like, you know what, it's worth it, I'll pay. And so it's definitely a dance, and you have to do a lot of testing to figure out exactly what that point is for your target demographic. And you'll see as you go from app to app, it does vary pretty widely in terms of like where they chose to put that paywall. So I think a fun thing that Scout does, and this is, there's a lot of men in the dating industry who, like as users, who just get no attention, ever. The average man on a site like OkCupid receives anywhere from like 0 to 2 messages in a month. So, and whereas the average woman will get 50 in the first day. And so it's just completely skewed in terms of where the messaging and where the attention goes. And so men who generally don't get attention are willing to pay to get placed higher up, whether it be to boost their social media profiles that they wanted to showcase, or whether it's just to like get more attention in the first place. I remember the first time I was on, what was it? It was Baidu, and I paid for a boost, and I went from getting 0 messages for the whole first like 2-3 days to suddenly getting, I think I got like 40 messages in an hour, and that was insane because I was like, I only paid like $5 for this. This was so worth it. And so a lot of times you can get users to be really excited if you give them the ability to boost themselves. And I know Tinder recently added a feature like that too, where you can pay to put yourself at like the front of other people's stacks. Because if you like, let's say you walk into West Hollywood and you say like, okay, I want to meet some people, Tinder doesn't necessarily put you at the front for everyone around you. It just puts you somewhere in that stack, but if you pay, they put you higher up. It's the same deal, just going another example of what it looks like. You can pay more to make yourself visible to more people other than the ones just in your immediate vicinity. If you want to have more of like if you want everyone in the world on this app to see you, I don't know what that actually converts to in terms of price, but I would guess that 14,000 tokens probably is in the like $50 to $100 range, just to get featured across the world. So it can be actually a really good angle if you just want to promote your product as a user. Some people do, like they put, they make their profile picture like their Pinterest page or their Snapchat account, or a lot of cam models will use this. If you put yourself in front of 14,000 men as a cam model, you're going to get a lot of users coming in. So it can be actually like for $60, that can be a really good ad spend for the, sexual entrepreneurs in the world. This is just another example of like what Scout lets you do if you want to send a message to a bunch of people at once rather than having to message each person individually. I generally recommend against that, and I don't like this as a feature just because spamming your users is not the thing you generally want to do. I think Scout's more comfortable doing it because its user base skews really young and they're willing to tolerate that more. But if you did this to a user base over 30, they'd be like, what the hell are you doing? Who are these people that are sending me these mass messages? And there's also this travel feature. As the world becomes a little bit more globalized, people are willing to say like, oh, I'm going to be traveling to Switzerland next week, and I'll set my location on Tinder or on Scout or on any other app to that location ahead of time so I can start making friends before I even get there or start planning dates. And so that's something that people will pay for, especially the ones who are, if you have the capacity to travel in the first place, chances are you can afford to spend an extra like $5 on getting your profile shipped out to another country ahead of time. I don't know if anyone has experience with GIFs in the dating industry. So like when you send someone a rose or a special little thing, I have never witnessed an individual say that it's something they cared about or found any value in. And I don't know of many statistics that back up like the value of adding digital GIFs. It could operate kind of like a super like, where it's just like a way of making yourself stand out. I do know that it's been more and more popular in the live streaming scene. So it's a way of like supporting the artists or the makers that you're following by just like quickly sending them a little gift and they can get a portion of that revenue. But in the dating space, I still haven't really seen any useful uses of gift giving, and I've never heard a user say anything positive about it. So I'm like, I'd say the jury's out as far as I'm concerned.
One of our sponsors is Real Gifts. They're Real Gifts, and they're part different. They're not here now, but my understanding is they have a couple of clients. They do pretty well.
Yeah.
The ones in particular are the sugar daddy.
Oh yeah.
Those they do quite
But that's also like, I feel like if you're a sugar baby, the gift you'd want to receive is just cash, not.
well. Well, it ends with,
I don't think someone sending you like a digital rose is going to make or break your happiness that day.
But Real Gifts is real gifts.
Real Gifts is Real Gifts.
Okay, so yeah,
not-
that's
not the Not the
digital tokenized gifts are not as successful as
Panda
physical
or
thing.
Dad.
Oh no. If we're going into real gifts, then like that's an entirely separate industry of people who go on ChatterBait and sell their underwear every single night to the highest bidder. It's like, you have to buy me the underwear, I wear the underwear on camera, you see that because you're paying to view my feed, and then you can pay even more to get the underwear that evening when I take them off and ship them out. Like that's its own industry right there. But that's not this talk. So I think we're getting this, like we're just increasingly, you see, you can promote yourself by paying through the tokenized currency that the app provides. It's very common throughout this industry. No matter what it is that you want users to want to do, you can probably find a way of getting them to pay you to be able to do that, especially if it's something that directly translates into them getting the attention they want, being able to communicate with the people they want to communicate with. Just make sure you always focus, like, what value is this to the user? Is it something they really need to make a good experience? And if so, they'll probably pay for it. So there's another fun thing that's been trending in the dating industry lately is just the nerdiness of users who want to know more about, like, how do I optimize? How do I get better at what it is that I'm trying to do here? So it's like if I'm spending 3 hours a day on mobile, I don't know, I think on Grindr, the usage on Grindr was insane because people would leave the app open for I think it was 7 hours a day on just Grindr. So it's completely crazy how much usage certain apps will get. And so a lot of times users are nerdy about that. They're like, okay, how do I optimize this time that I'm spending? If I'm, Mark mentioned that I used that app that automatically likes everyone on Tinder. And for me, that was awesome because I'd make my first line this is where you can find me outside of Tinder. And so all of those people who would find me could choose for themselves and vote with their feet to come off the app and find me elsewhere. Those are the ones I wanted to talk to, the ones who took that initiative. But how do I track that? How do I know how I'm doing? Something like what Coffee Meets Bagel offers, it's a thing called Mirror Mirror, where it lets you see your ranking across all the different users, and you see the trends over time, how it changes. You see which photos are doing best, and that's something where a lot of people have no clue. The individuals will come and pay me saying I don't know how to do Tinder. No one likes me back. What's going on here? And so I'll go through is it your profile? Is it your photos? Is it the way you message people? And so now dating apps using things like AI and machine learning can help you understand that better. And obviously the users who want to understand that will pay for it. So in terms of what we can learn from this, first thing is just don't ruin the user experience. This is what we learned from full page video ads. Your users will hate you. Don't do things that make them completely incapable of doing what it is they wanted to come in the app in the first place to do. But guide them through the process, get them really close to the point of perfect fulfillment, and that's where you can get them to pay. And then if there's an experience where it could be a lot, the average user is okay, but if the power users really want to have an awesome experience, they'll be willing to pay more for that. So that's boosting your profile out beyond your existing city. And then there's also ways when I showed you the message previews, you should never just block the entire inbox from a user and say you have to pay to read any messages. Why would they do that? They have no reason to believe that they even have real users on your app. So what you do instead is you show them the messages that users have sent them, and then not the full message, just a snippet, so they get it. Oh, there's a person behind that thing. I want to go further, and that's when you've gotten them. That's when they're more likely to pay. So let's go into some of the trends we've been seeing on the UX user engagement side, because I want to just get more into the psyche of these daters, because there are a lot. They come in many shapes and sizes and forms and orientations and preferences. So I want to go into what is it that these users actually need to have a good experience. These stats are changing. I think the most recent one I saw on this was that it bumped up to 64% in terms of people who are looking to meet those with similar interests and hobbies. And I think the fun part of that is that users are not just like marriage hunting. They're not just using dating apps to find someone to sleep with or someone that they want to actively date. Sometimes they just want to find like an activity partner. That's like the fun phrase that some people code that as sex, but it is something that a lot of apps will use, like activity partners, people like friends to go do something with. And as dating apps get better at tapping into your interest graph, all the different things that like constitute like that constellation of things you care about and may want to do, it's nice to see that with new technology, they can say like, okay, you and this person really want to do this thing, go do it. And I think users are responding pretty nicely to that. So we see that they're increasingly saying like, I just want to find someone who wants to do cool shit that I want to do. And it's really hard to like walk into a bar and know who the hell is the person in this bar who I'm both attracted to and wants to do cool shit, because you have to talk to every single one to get that information. Whereas you go online and you're just like, here's the cool shit I'm doing. And then people are like, oh, and they vote with their feet right into your inbox and say, oh, I want to do that too, let's do it. Or even better, the app understands from both you and the other users what it is that you want to do, because you've quietly said that either somewhere embedded in your profile or through your behavior, and they can just surface the users who already want to do those things. And the same goes, it's not just always doing things. Like you see the near follower there, meeting people who share your beliefs and values. We see a lot of niche dating categories where it's like we have Christian mingle and black people meet, and I think both of those are in the match group portfolio. But like there's, when you say like, I want to, like, my family will kill me if I don't marry someone who's Jewish. And so you have like, those are your options. You go on JDate, JSwipe, and beyond that you want to OkCupid, set your filter to Jewish. And so dating apps can recognize that and say like, oh look, like we can not only surface all the people from your niche group, but we can add in features if we're not, OkCupid's a catch-all. So they add in features that filter down a little bit further. What's notable is that even though users say they want something, it's rare that they actually follow through on it. A lot of users will, and this applies equally to things like your preferences. If you say you want someone over 6 feet, you'll probably tolerate someone who's 5'9" if they're really cool. If you say you want someone who's Jewish, actually that might be a harder preference to get someone to budge on. But I know JDate does leave an option open for people who are like considering or interested in exploring Judaism. So you can still capture that there is user variation. Even when they say one thing, they may not always mean it. OkCupid did a cool experiment a few years back where they blacked out all the profiles on the entire site to see how users would engage. Would they still send messages? Would they respond to messages if they couldn't see any of the profile photos? Because they wanted to see like how big an issue is attraction here. And they found that people actually had a much better time chatting with people, but they didn't actually meet up more. So attraction is still a huge factor, but it's not the only factor, and people are still willing to engage even in the absence of photos. This is something I made. I just thought it was really fun to think through, like, how can we reframe how daters approach what they need to get done? Like, why are you on Match.com? Why are you on Tinder? And the way I like to think about it is, like, the first couple things you really need to know is, like, is this person near enough that I can meet them? If not, why am I on this app? Is this person attractive enough that I should spend my time finding them? If not, once again, why? Are they online? If they didn't log in for 2 years, why am I using this app? So it's pretty important to cover those first 3 baseline ones. If I can't see any of the users on your app, then why would I trust that it's an app worth going on? And this is something I know Susie Lee at Siren faced. One of the things that she did, it was pretty novel. She was making like a feminist dating app, and she made it so men couldn't see women's photos. They were blurred out, but they could still chat with them, and the women could see the men's photos. Because she wanted to make it so men wouldn't just constantly spam women that they perceive to be attractive with all these annoying messages complimenting them on their looks. And so it actually worked in terms of like the user behavior on the app did show that people would still engage, they would still message, but they weren't necessarily meeting up, and they weren't necessarily like excitedly telling their friends about this app. And so I think it was still failing to meet, if you're still meeting or failing to meet that like are they attractive portion, you end up just missing like the point of being a dating app, because people are oftentimes looking at attraction as a huge variable, attraction and shared interests. So it's definitely something to keep in mind. I know Siren just closed after 2 or 3 years of operation this past year. So it's just like a lesson learned is that it's hard to grow a user base, especially when half the users can't see each other. And it was like a cool thing that she tried, but it was also, it was an experiment, and it just didn't work. The next level is, do they like me? So like I can like everyone on Tinder, but like if I don't know whether they like me back, then I'm once again at square one. And if I don't know how much they like me, then I don't know where I fall on their priority stack. Like, do they like me enough to cut out of work early? Do they like me enough to even respond to my message? Like, I need to know these things before I can really get into this app and understand how it's working. Otherwise, I'm just sending messages into the ether, and I'm never getting really good feedback. Are they real? That's some apps, reveal their hand too early, where they show you just bot after bot messaging you all of a sudden, and you're like, I logged in 2 seconds ago and I have no profile picture. Why is your first message to me, hey, sexy? Like, get out of here. Please don't do that if you're building a dating app. Your users will hate you. And lastly, like, can I contact them? If I see someone, they're real, they're attractive, they're nearby, but I can't actually send them a message, or I can't communicate with them in a way that allows me to do the thing we wanted to do, then once again, why am I on this app? And obviously any of these can be part of a paywall, but if you try to have too many of those behind a paywall, where I just like feel that like this is going to take so much time and energy to have my needs met, then I probably won't stick around very long. A lot of apps will start keeping all of these free, and then they'll add in certain things behind paywalls once they see that, oh, users are like super engaged up until the point where they want to contact. And that's where, like, if we put in the paywall right there, and we do like a lot of A/B testing to find out, but like that's where people will still just bust right through it and pay. So this is like each one of these can be its own paywall that you integrate. I don't know if anyone can think of a single app that fulfills every one of these. This is partially my mission in the industry, is like, can I help founders build an app that actually accomplishes this? Because it's so rare for you to be able to actually engage with, like, to go through the whole dating app experience successfully. Like it's, that's partially why users like it. It's the variable schedule of reinforcement. It's like fishing, where like most of the time you don't catch anything, but that one time you do, it's really awesome. In the dating industry, most of the time you're sending out messages, you're scrolling, you're swiping on 100 people a day, but you're not actually meeting people. And maybe one time you do meet someone, they end up being really cool. But another problem in the dating industry is oftentimes you just meet someone and they suck, and then you're like, I went through all that work, went on all these different apps, finally met someone and they were terrible. So now what? Like, where am I left with there? So that kind of speaks to the quality of the user base and the capacity of you as the operator to actually make sure that you engineer good matches and good conversations that are likely to turn into good dates. And even like the way that people conceptualize dating, this goes into a different world of just like our own mental models as a society or globally about how dating can and should operate, where a lot of people think that drinks is the only viable first date, and if it's not drinks, then you shouldn't be doing it. And that just, when you're talking about like doing fun activities together, what if people don't like drinking? Or what if drinking turns into just like you trying to make a move on someone every time, and they just rebuff it and then leave, and then you're like, well, I guess dating sucks. But really, your models about dating suck. You think that drinks is the only first access point to meeting another human, but evolutionarily, that didn't exist for most of our history of meeting people. It's really conversation. It's doing fun things together or accomplishing a mission together. That's how you meet a lot of people. So if we gear our app too much toward drinks, then, or like traditional dates, we can oftentimes miss out on like the wider human potential of like what we can be doing together. So let's see like a little bit more of what we can learn. Tinder, I've mentioned a lot of times just because it's one of the most successful apps. It's pulling the whole industry forward, especially with its novel integrations of machine learning and AI. But what they've done beyond that is crazy. Like they finally made it. I know OkCupid was struggling for so long because you send out 50 messages and you get 0 replies, and you're like, well, great. But Tinder's like, no, don't send any messages until you know that this person at least is attracted to you. And they also made it so they kept calling it a swiping game. They never called it a dating app, and so you never had to worry about like, oh, I'm on the dating app because I can't date in real life. I have to use an app. So like they helped kill that stigma because it's like, oh, it's just this fun game you can play with friends. Like I actually made a bar game where like you swipe based on, it's like ring around, was it hot potato? You swipe on someone else's phone, and every time you get a match, you take a drink. And then because women get so many more matches than men, if you have 2 phones, the women's profile is the one you take a sip of beer. The men's profile, whenever they happen to get a match, you take a shot. So you can have some fun with that. And it was a game. Like that's what was really cool about Tinder. It was one of the first dating games. And also, I'll show you here how fast they made onboarding. You know, the average app, like you go in and you have to like type up your profile information and select from a list of like 50 categories of different things you like. And like you can spend 25 minutes on there and then the app crashes and you're like, fuck you, I'm never coming back here. This is stupid. Tinder is like, no, you don't type a single thing. You press 1 tap, 2 tap, 3 tap, and now you swipe. If your first swipe turns into someone liking you back, you've spent approximately 2.5 seconds, 4 thumb taps, and you're already chatting with someone. And that's completely insane. It was like unheard of in the dating industry the day they came out. I remember sharing it with over 50 people by text. I literally texted each person a personalized link saying, you need to use this immediately. It was that transformative. And so now we see like logging in with Facebook is increasingly the norm, or other social media profiles, and just getting users as quickly as you can to the point of doing the thing they wanted to do in the first place. Like, why are they coming in here? Don't make them fill out all this profile information if it's not absolutely core to the experience. Like, let them do it later once they want to optimize. But the first pass at the experience where they decide whether or not to keep your app on their phone, you want to make that happen as quickly as possible.
Doesn't that also, I mean, do you think that that's also what led to Tinder being considered the hookup app? I mean, because there's not much invested. If you could onboard in 3 seconds and meet somebody in 5 seconds and start messaging and then hook up that night, it's like, whoa, wow, this is cool if you just want to hook up. But if you're looking for like more than that, does this sort of fast lead to that?
So I think that the easier you make that process, the more communication will happen, period, regardless of whether it's for hooking up or meeting up. I mean, I've used Tinder plenty of times just to meet people because I wanted to go get food. I didn't have any friends in that city, so I could use Tinder to pull someone in immediately to go and just do the thing, whatever that thing is. If you're Tindering at 11 p.m. on a Friday, then chances are you're going to find someone to hook up with. So like it's about time. And this is where like there's a really fascinating way of looking at dating through the lens of user intent. And most dating apps, like, you know, eHarmony, what's the intent? It's to get married. You go on like very rigid types of dates so that you can ultimately get married to this person. You fill out a lot of extensive information. The cool thing about Tinder that they did was it was almost entirely intent agnostic. It was a swiping game. Like you bring your intent to the app, and every single day, no matter what time of day, it's a different kind of intent. So like if you're swiping at 10 in the morning, you may not be looking to hook up. You might be looking for someone to go have lunch with, or maybe to go on like a day trip with. If you're swiping at 10 in the evening, then it's a different story. But like it's the same app, but the intent varies. And the cool thing that Tinder does is it lets you be the voice of your own intent. Granted, it's not, the average user may not be very capable of recognizing the power that they have in that situation, and instead they just say, hey. And then you're like, okay, well, you just shot yourself in the foot there because you're one of 50 other people who just said hey to the same user. So good luck. But it is a really cool thing that like it gives users the power to do when it lets them discern for themselves what their intent is and then communicate that. But that's where like I would argue the dating industry has long passed humans' capacity to be too human, to just be a person who's able to communicate. Like the functionality and features of the dating industry go well beyond what we are struggling to catch up. When you have you can have an app tells you within seconds, like all the people nearby who have all the same preferences you want, who are as attractive as you want them to be, and you can communicate with them in real time. And yet we as users totally fail by saying, hey, what's up? Or nice tits. Like that's what we get from people. So like user behavior lags behind user capacity. And that's a problem. But that's more of a problem for like humans to look within themselves rather than the industry to actually have to deal with. Although we do have to deal with it as an industry because, you know, we don't want to necessarily just build for the bottom quartile of people who are just going to like flood the apps and piss off all the other users by sending them nonsense. So that's like a broader philosophical issue we can address later.
Steve, I feel like last year they had a statistic about that said less than 20% of your users actually ever meet face-to-face. Mm-hmm. Is that accurate, or is that of all apps?
I would guess that that's accurate. I think a lot of what people do on Tinder is they swipe a lot, they get a lot of matches, or if they're the average man, they probably don't get that many matches. But even other matches they have, they'll send crappy messages, and the person's like, okay, in my 3 hours of attentional time I dedicate to my phone, I probably dedicate 7 minutes a day max to Tinder. In those 7 minutes, what am I actually doing? Am I going to read hey, 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 and do anything? No, those are all deleted. So the average user, you know, the average person, when you say, oh, what should I say to this girl? And your friend's like, oh, just say hey. And, hey. But like, if everyone gets the same advice, and we as a society suck at giving dating advice, that's why I get paid, then, you know, we end up with this situation where the average female user is just like inundated with crappy messages and is not going to meet any of those people. But the people who actually do use the app in the way that it is capable of being used, like optimally for just being a social person, then you'll get what you're there for. And so maybe that's 20% of users that actually know how to take advantage of the full range of what's possible in the app. But yeah, I think 20% feels even high.
Yeah.
Being generous.
I saw a pitch recently. There's a dating app called Whim that their pitch is that they pitched at some conference. I think they said it's like 16 or 14 or 16% meet in person, and on their app it's 76%, because their app has no messaging. It's you match and you pick a date on when you're going to meet. And so they got rid of the messaging chat part of their app altogether. That's because they were trying to encourage more a more one-on-one dating and a better experience than getting ghosted and just which I don't know if everyone knows that term, but anyway, where you just leave the chat and you have a ton of messages and dick pics, you know, and they wanted to get rid of that and sort of.
I think they launched in LA. Whim, yeah, it's Eve Peters, and then she moved to San Francisco with it right after that. Yeah, Whim is a good example of. It's a good and a bad example in ways. Like the dates that they suggest are generally meeting up for drinks or dinner, which I find to be like just so boring at this point, and it's so overdone that people are getting less and less enthusiastic about it. But the process that she used for getting people to meet up, I think, is really powerful. And if she incorporates a little bit more of the like novelty to it, like what makes the thing you're doing more important than the person you're doing it with, because probabilistically this may not be the best person for you. We don't necessarily have perfect information about this person or about your reaction to them. But if we put you in a scenario where you'll likely get along and do something really cool and memorable, then you have net positive experiences, even if it's not the most attractive person you've ever met or the most compelling person. So I think it's important to be able to help users get guided into better types of dates, not just faster time to meet up. So I don't know if anyone's familiar with this guy, but it's interesting to see how social networking and dating are, and this is the kind of what we're talking about. It's like the push towards social, toward not just meeting up for drinks or just targeted, like I want to be with a match and it has to be like the perfect person, but instead like, no, we're all in this dating industry together. We're all fumbling through these profiles, trying to understand what's going on, who we're meeting. And what's more important is that we can like leave with positive or at least fun and memorable experiences, even if that one particular person wasn't perfect for us. So I think this increasing trend toward just like integrating socially is something that I like to keep track of because I find that it's highly predictive of like what apps will come next. And so I think it's really important to look at how we do messaging, because if we are going social and we are talking, like how do we communicate to other people? That's going to be like a huge piece of this puzzle. So when we look at social networking apps versus messaging apps, we see that user attention is going increasingly toward the messaging apps. So in this case, I think big four are like WeChat, Facebook Messenger, Kik, WhatsApp, maybe the four. But like those kinds of messaging apps, they're increasingly becoming their own platforms where like they have built-in stickers and monetization mechanisms. They now can summon your car for you. When you say to someone like, hey, let's meet up at Tuesday at 5, like M within Facebook Messenger can be like, yo, do you need an Uber Tuesday at 5? I already got that noted down on your calendar. It's just like total integration. The tech is getting insane. So I think just thinking about how messaging works on your app, you cannot, like, I witnessed a founder that I was consulting for a few years ago. He launched an app where all he did was switch the side that the messages came from. Like 99% of messaging apps have the same standard format that everyone understands intuitively. And he just changed it. No one used it. It was the most miserable experience because you're just like, your brain just hates it. And so it was something where, like, don't screw around with like the basics of messaging. People have a certain way that they understand it. And if you make it really difficult, then that just adds so much friction to the person's experience. But what you can do is optimize it so you can add stickers, you can monetize off of stickers too. You can add different API plugins that allow you to do, I know the app Pure lets you call an Uber. It's like a sex on demand app. So like the only thing you do, submit a selfie, find other people's selfies and like them. And if you both like each other's selfie, the only option is to ride to wherever they're standing with Uber. And it's just like perfect. Like in terms of like making an entire user experience streamlined to the point of like ruthless efficiency, like it's scary. But it does plug in with the Uber API, and so like that's right in. Like it's not even really messaging at that point. It's just, you can send messages, but most users don't even really care that much to send. There's not that much to say Friday at 2 a.m. when you're on a sex app. So if you want to see more about like what the trend has looked like in terms of how we send messages, I mentioned stickers. But if you are if you're building a dating app, you need to know what's happening in Snapchat and Facebook Messenger. Period. Like it would be insane for you to not thoroughly study what's going on there, because of things like the rise of stickers, followed by Bitmoji, which is like stickers that have your face on them in many different ways, and it updates almost daily with holiday-based stickers. So it's like this is how we communicate now. So we have this like limitless capacity for choosing novel ways of communication, and we're either using it or not as an industry. If we're not tapping into it, then we're cutting users off. And so rather than being able to send a clever GIF or Bitmoji, they instead will have to send words, and people suck at words. They're much better at GIFs. And so sometimes you can have entire conversations using only GIFs and only emojis, like that's something that we're seeing now, and it's kind of beautiful and brilliant because the apps that are taking advantage of that are smart. They understand that like if users are spending most of their attentional time in messaging apps like WeChat, like Facebook Messenger, when they go to a dating app, if they suddenly were used to all of these different messaging features and they're now gone because the dating app didn't think ahead and only has text-based communication, you're leaving money on the table. Like you're not catering to what your users already know, what they're used to experiencing, and they're going to feel that your app is just like nothing. It's just missing the mark. And now even like with Snapchat, there's face filters, and I know I will say one thing: face filters can be really cool. But when 50% of your user base suddenly has the same face filter, like, I can't tell you how annoying that is as a user to witness, like, it's literally like watching mind control be implemented on a huge swath of people where they all just suddenly do the same thing, and then you get really bored really quick because you're like, okay, dog face filter, I get it. Like, you didn't need to have every person's Tinder profile in the span of, a couple of weeks suddenly switch to dog face or flower girl. I don't know how many people are familiarized with what I'm saying there, but like it's a thing, these new face filters. And I just saw an app recently where they required that you put a face filter on, and I thought that was the stupidest thing I've ever seen done by a dating app, was requiring all users to buy into their horrible, horrible filters that they made custom, that like none of them were worth it. And I deleted the app on the grounds that like I don't consent to forcing my face into their arbitrary, like poorly designed filter. So be careful with that. Anytime you think of shipping something to your entire user base and requiring that they do something that's non-traditional, it's probably going to blow up in your face. We were talking about messaging and like how women receive too many. I think this graph depicts it pretty nicely. Women tend to receive all the messages. Like men do all the sending, because if you think about it, I may quote it later, demand for sex by men is largely inelastic. So like no matter what you throw at them, men will still demand it. Even if if you take all the photos away, men will still demand it. If you take, like it's a thing that is just like it's a truism of the industry, and so men will just constantly go for it. I don't know how they get that much energy to expend, but it's a thing. So be ready for men to go to the ends of the earth to send annoying, crappy, hey, what's up messages to unsuspecting women. Yeah, so this was actually sent to me this morning by a friend. She was going through, so OkCupid does a cool thing. They actually give you a filtered inbox, so you don't have to deal with this. As a female user, you get so many shitty messages that they literally just give you a separate inbox that captures any messages that only consist of, hey, what's up? And it just puts all of those messages into that folder, and you never have to look at it. And it's beautiful, because they realize like how shitty is the experience for a user. If let's say your inbox is capped at 500, and in the first week you get 500 messages, 98% of which are, hello, hi there, coffee, hello, beautiful. Like it's really sad, and men just don't get it, and they seem to not be learning either. Like this morning. This is not like all these dates. Like it's not like men are getting better over time. No one's teaching them. Like I try, but I'm only one person here. So how do we do it? Like, how do we actually help identify and just build for this discrepancy? We do have some apps, like you have to first understand like how many women are actually on your app. It's interesting to see Grindr has 6.8% women. I don't know what that means. I'd love to find out. Zeus, I was shocked. I want to be shocked, but I wasn't, because the way that Zeus largely monetizes is by making you pay to send messages. So naturally, you don't need women on the app if all you need are just men who are willing to pay to send messages to the women who are not on the app. So, when was this from? 2016. So I don't think it's changed too significantly. It's just last April. Coffee Meets Bagel. I mean, that's been a really powerful app to hit the industry. I was there when they first launched, and I've just seen it continually grow. It's still like the things that they do, you can learn a lot from. They send you really cool icebreakers about like things that the user actually wants you to talk to them about. And so it starts off the thread in the conversation with like, hey, you should talk about this thing right now. And then they'll send you push notifications for the next week because your chat stays live for a week. And they'll be like, hey, did you send anything yet? If not, get on it. You only have a week. You only have 2 days. You only have a day. So they keep you coming back, keep you like engaged. They're like, you swiped on this person. Do you want to message them or not? Like, and talk about something interesting. Here, this is what they want you to talk about. Like, they're just so good at giving you that extra bit, and that's all it takes sometimes to get users to be like, even 50 to 60% better than baseline, which is shocking. It doesn't take much to surprise the average female user with the quality of your message. If you just include an extra word. Right now, the average that they're getting is the hey, what's up, hello. This is a fascinating study that came out. And this, I don't want to derail too far from where we're going with this, but it was basically showing that women are generally not very satisfied with their first encounters with I don't know if this is assuming heterosexuality, but there's this huge orgasm gulf between men and women where I think for men it was hovering around like 70% the whole time. And for women, like they can't anticipate a first experience with someone being positive. And so that also leads a lot to this lack of desire to engage, especially with men who are clearly only soliciting sex. Because for men, like, their not just demand is inelastic, but their pleasure is largely inelastic. Like, they're pretty much going to have a good time, even if like the woman doesn't care or is not engaged at all. So that's pretty problematic for our species, I would say. But these are the numbers for now. Hopefully we'll get them to change. So what does it mean to like design with women in mind? Certain things to take into account. Half of people online have either dealt with catfishing, where someone is not the person they appeared to be in their profile. Women, I'm desperately surprised by this, that it's only 20% of online daters have felt uncomfortable by the way they've been contacted. I know my friend was just recently contacted via email from someone from LinkedIn insisting that he take her out to coffee. And she's like, dude, you sent this from your company email address. I'm reporting you to your own HR. Like, get out of here. So like, it's not even just the dating industry that has to deal with this. It's just women in general have to deal constantly with men's unwanted attention. So like, if you can just factor that in when you're thinking about the user experience, like women on your app categorically, because they're women, will get unwanted attention. And so how can you make it an easier process for them? And you see the stats, the 42 versus 17 in terms of unwanted contact from these apps. That's, even that proportion doesn't quite feel accurate. I just feel like maybe women come to me when they've already had these negative experiences, so I'm just getting like the brunt of their just like pain and frustration. But it's definitely something that I can speak to in terms of like having chatted with over 3,000 people about their experiences. It's pretty much guaranteed that if you're a woman in online dating, you've experienced something either off-putting, annoying, or negative. I think this quote kind of sums up this section pretty nicely. It just sucks to be a woman in dating, and I wish we had better apps for them. So I wanted to show you Pure, because I mentioned that it's like the sex on demand app. So I think it's 19-1, men to women. This 75-5 was just from my little case study that I did in Brooklyn, New York. So like I said, it's not only that you don't necessarily need a photo as a woman. You don't. Like, you can put like a dick in a meat grinder and people would still want to have sex with it. I don't understand. Like that's just like that's the state that we're in terms of like men on the internet. So just I don't even know where to go with this. It makes me sad. But yeah, there's this just it goes to show the state that we're in. The demand for sex is still very high, and it's not just sex. I think the problem is that men code sex as intimacy, or code intimacy as sex because they're not taught how to decouple them. And so they just assume like everyone craves intimacy as a human. You like the contact of other humans, whether it be emotional or physical. And for men, they're generally taught from an early age that like getting sex is the only way to get emotional intimacy or any kind of physical closeness. There's very rare cases of like platonic touch among men, or any kind of touch from man to man, and so you have to go for women's touch. That's your only opportunity, and that's something that generally, because of the way that men are taught to interact with women in a patriarchal society, we end up with men consistently shooting themselves in the foot because women are like, I don't want this is gross, this is terrible, why are all these men coming at me? And men aren't women, so they don't have that perspective. They don't realize how their behaviors come across, both online and offline. And so that's something that we can try to start, maybe helping our users with. I know OkCupid, as you're swiping, they started adding in these stats, which are really fun. It's like, if you do this thing in this app, you are 80% less likely to succeed. So like they give you like the actual feedback of like, this is why you suck, or at least this is how you could improve. Please do it, because otherwise you're wasting your time and ours and our users' time. So yeah, like right now, women have to tolerate, the good and the bad. Men just get so frustrated and angry all the time, and women have to deal with the brunt of that. So it can be really frustrating. So just please think about your users when you're building. Don't just interview male users. Don't take into account the experiences that your female users have had, and usually they can give really good recommendations about how they'd like it to happen in an ideal world. So how do you get trust and kindness, things like that to happen? You have to. Let's ignore the guy on LinkedIn who sent the message from his company email address, because I hope he's somewhat of an anomaly. Because usually when you have someone show their workplace, they get to be a little bit less creepy, because they know that they're accountable to that. If you're a software engineer at Google, you're less likely to send something really skeevy because they could just report you to your own HR. I hope. Showing mutual friends, that's a really good idea because it lets you see we have these people that hold us accountable between one another. Facebook Connect, like I mentioned, that's just increasingly standard because it's super easy for, they already have done all the moderation on the photos, so you don't have to pay for that. They also make it so you can, just a faster and smoother login process. And because you're making people have a Facebook account first, a lot of, over 2 billion users now have Facebook accounts, so it's not really going to ostracize you from that many users. What else do we have? Things like Instagram, why make a user upload 10 photos when they can just link an Instagram, which has all their photos? And they've already done the curation there. Why make them duplicate that effort if they've already done it? So those integrations can be really powerful and save users a lot of time. And also just makes the experience better, because then when I'm worried about do I really want to meet this person? If I see their Instagram, I'll be like, oh, I definitely don't want to meet them now. But sometimes it can go either way. But knowing that ahead of time means that you're more prepared for what's going to happen, and you're better able to make the right decision. So you'll have fewer negative experiences with your users. I think fun prompts is another really fun one, just because I like the way that Coffee Meets Bagel did it, where they would let you say what are the prompts you want to receive, so that you could actually let the other users know, hey, talk to me about these things, because that will get my attention. Otherwise, you're just wasting both of our time. So I think that can be just a nice thing to include if you want your users to be extra engaged, is ways of just getting them thinking, getting them being creative, minimizing the incidence of, hey, what's up? Because that really needs to not exist anymore in this industry. If you think about just I remember the founder of CAPTCHA was really upset because he realized he calculated there was 1.2 billion seconds that the human race spent trying to guess what was scribbled in a little verification box, the CAPTCHA and reCAPTCHA thing. And he's like, I've just wasted that much of my species' time just trying to scribble in letters into a box. And he felt so bad about that he actually linked up CAPTCHA to the Google library so that it would pull snippets from the library and you'd actually translate books through the CAPTCHA process, which is amazing. But I say that because when you're wasting users' time, like that's members of our species, and if we're just having them shit away like hours per day sending hey what's ups, then that doesn't benefit anyone. And if you see that happening in your app, please just like do something about it. Coordinate, like see what people are doing in messaging apps. Follow, come to these conferences. Just do what you can to minimize that. So let's see what's coming up. This is just the final wing. So I want you to get a sense. I'm just going to prep us for the chatbots too. It's actually my friend's VR company who did this as an art project. They wanted to see what virtual Tinder would be. And there's a video that came along with that. We're not going to watch that today. So there were some cool things that happened in 2016. This is when like chatbots both became really, really popular, but also when people started to realize, like once everyone started trying to make them, you realize what are the upper limits of like what a chatbot can do, and do we really need chatbots for everything? Those are two questions we're still actively pondering, and we'll get a lot more information as this conference goes on. But it's really cool that you see that, yes, attention is going to messaging, the big 4, big 5 messaging apps. But in addition to that, it's not just that you're messaging, but like the bots are embedded deeply into the fabric of those messenger ecosystems. So they can tell you when you're saying, hey, let's meet tomorrow, it can not only have a bot that can pull in the calendar bots to say like, okay, let's add this to your calendar right now. It can also pull in like the Uber bot where it says, do you want to ride there now? If you say like, hey, I'll be there in 20, it says, do you want us to call you an Uber in 20 minutes? So it's really cool that like these are, whether you call them chatbots or not, they're bots. They're in a chat interface, and they're there to help you do the thing you wanted to do. And so in the dating industry, it's kind of a challenge to decide when and how to implement them, because it can feel very like invasive. If you're saying like, hey, if you get a message from a bot saying like, hey, I see that this person's interested in XYZ thing, is this something that you would want to try? Like, that could be good, depending on, like, this is where the failure cases will speak very loudly. Because if the bot suggests something that's like way outside of what you're comfortable receiving from, because that just, it really, people don't like to know that the technology knows way more about them than they're comfortable with. So if a bot ever told you, like, based on your browsing history, you should recommend this activity, then you'd be like, oh shit. So like, you have to be careful with how your bots are structured and when you choose to implement them. Actually, as an experiment, built a fuckboy chatbot. I don't know if anyone's familiar with that term, but it's like men who just constantly solicit sex from women, regardless of women's desire or intent, have been ascribed to the term fuckboy. And I built a chatbot that only responds to people by like requesting nudes and pressuring them for sex and just being awful, because I wanted to really encapsulate how annoying they are. And so I ended up I'm getting constant engagement on it. But it's like it's just so funny to see how frustrating it can be when you're dealing with the bot that like it's smart enough to make you think that it might be a person for a split second, and that's what makes you even more frustrated because now you're talking to this thing and you can't tell, and you're just like, I hate you so. So I think when you're thinking whether to add a bot, I would err for the most part on the side of if it can increase the functionality of what your users already want to do, like if like the Uber bot gets your users to meet up faster, then that could be awesome. But I don't know that we're ready as an industry for the, automated assistant that reads all of the content of all the messages you've ever sent and then uses that to like pull in some AI and machine learning to guess what you should be typing. That said, I'd love to see someone try. I don't think it's something we should not innovate in. I think it's actually incredibly valuable because like, imagine how many fewer hey, what's up messages you'd get if, as you're typing, the bot would be like, yo, I see you're about to send one of those messages again. How about I do the reading of the profile because I know you're not going to read it. And the bot will say, you should probably talk about this thing because this overlaps between your profile and theirs. That would actually be pretty awesome. Like if you can help correct users' existing behavior, then chances are your users will be happier because they're going to be having more success cases.
Where did you run your bot?
Oh, I just put it right up on Facebook.
And you didn't have a problem getting it? I mean, a bot like that, the fuckboy bot, Facebook didn't have a problem with that?
No, surprisingly. It took me 30 minutes to build and deploy, and I just let it set it and forget it. And now people just find it, message it, get annoyed by it. It knows how to make your mom jokes now. So like, it's terrible. It really is a horrible creature, and I feel bad that I made it. But
What did you use?
I use ChatFuel. Yeah, it's a company that lets you like build a bot in under 10 minutes.
Is it still online?
Yeah, it's m.me/fuccbot. Fuck bot. I couldn't actually put FUCK because Facebook does ban the use of URLs that include that word. But yeah, like this is Esther Crawford. She was huge in the bot scene in 2016 because she was one of the people who's like producing a lot of the leading edge content on like how to build bots, where you should build bots, what services are best, what use cases are there that are pretty novel. And this is where she talked about using it for dating, using it as like a dating liaison where rather than me having to type a message to 50 people, my bot could do it because it already knows what I'm going to say based on the quality of their profile. Granted, there is one app that's now doing this, and it's called Bernie. It came out this year, and it's like an AI app where it gives you a test group of like maybe 50 swipes that you swipe through. It like links with like Tinder, I think Hinge or Happen, and you first like teach it who you like. So it lets you calculates based on your swipes who you're attracted to, and then you give it a set of first line messages that you'd like it to test out on these users, and so it goes into Tinder automatically and just swipes for you. And then it starts sending messages to those users, and then ultimately what you see on the app is like, it'll say, hey, I reached out to these 30 users, and of those 30, I sent these messages, and these are the 2 users who actually replied, so you should message them. So it does save you a lot of time, but like, I'm still not sure how I feel. I'm not comfortable, and that's me still not comfortable letting a bot make those decisions about who to swipe on and who to message. So that's something where I would say be careful about that, because I definitely don't think the industry is fully ready for it. It's something that we can push people's boundaries and test it out, but if that's going to be like your entire focus as an app, you're probably going to miss the mark, at least now. We're still too early for that. When it comes to things like video, how many people have tried a video dating app? It's something it's so hard to get video right because like people can barely take a selfie right now. The idea of them being able to do a full video is, it's far-fetched. There are definitely video dating companies that come here every year, and some of them have, it's like varying levels of success, but the challenge is still the same. It's that users just aren't good at being charismatic in a candid setting, and a lot of times their videos just like, if you've ever seen those videos from like the 80s on VHS of people like holding their cat in a frumpy sweater, talking about how they're looking for the right match for them, like it still feels like that in a way. Luckily, we have things like Snapchat and now Facebook and Instagram going into live video and streaming video and getting us more comfortable with it. But this is one of those things where the dating industry can't really lead. It has to follow based on waiting until people are comfortable with putting themselves on video on a regular basis. And I think what's interesting to learn is that the types of videos that people take, like a dating user will upload a video of like them walking through a forest. They're less likely to upload a video of them just talking to the camera because that's just a thing that people are not yet accustomed to. Most of the time when you're Snapchatting, I guess like if you're in Snapchat, you are a little bit more accustomed because of the face filters to like do novel things with your face, but that's not what you want to present to the public on a dating app. It's not where we are. You'd more like present it to your friends, and your friends would think it's funny because it's you, but like the public doesn't understand why you just put a face filter on and what that means. So it's a little bit harder to properly integrate into dating. But I will say live video is very likely the future of where dating's going, because as more people have smartphones, internet speeds get faster, data plans get bigger, users can experiment more with, it's like no one wants to just swipe through endless profiles of like still boring, nothingness when you could have a live video and immediately see a person interacting with their environment. So I looked to China for this because the revenues coming in from live video are insane. I think Zhaowen, keep failing to pronounce that properly, the Chinese dating app, what? Zhuyan? Cool. I think they're at 50+% revenue coming in from live streaming video. Because their users are just like, oh, there's a person. Like everyone else is just like a static profile, but this person's actively doing something. I can follow them, I can watch them. I can buy them digital gifts, which they'll see in real time, as opposed to the ones where it's like just goes into the inbox somewhere. But like this is actually, you get to interact with people dynamically, which is something that's so unheard of on a dating app where usually you're just used to just like static profiles, that it's really nice to be able to see live video. So I'd say that's something that's worth looking into, if not as a core feature to your app, at least as like a way to get users to have a really cool experience when they first log in, because then they can like witness, like even if nothing else is happening here, you have this live video you can log into. And if you really like the person, you can just keep following them and like watch them as their lives unfold through this app. Chances are, what's up?
Here's what doesn't track for me from what you're saying right now. So live video is live. I mean, you screw up live, you're screwed. But you're saying video is, I mean, and I say this as someone who my app is a video app. It's all video. So, so I'm very curious on why that type of video, like, or at least what dating has done thus far in video, isn't working, whereas live video is when you are still doing the same mechanic with the camera. I mean, with your phone, you're still staring at the camera, whether it be live or whether it be recorded. So what do you think the differentiator is between the two?
So what usually happens in live video that makes it different from the videos you would like pre-record is that a pre-recorded video, it's usually you talking to the camera, and it's a little bit awkward. Whereas the reason people are doing live streaming a lot of times is that like they're either hanging out with a friend and they're just talking, or they're gaming, or they're doing something online, or they're actively engaging with the audience, and so it becomes a conversation. So rather than being a one-sided you to everyone, but you can't respond dynamically, you just presented one video that's a still video, or like a single video that got uploaded, as opposed to live. Like when it's that, people don't really get to engage in real time, and like you don't get to be yourself. You're just like the version of yourself you wanted to present in a static format. But the live video, like it has that air of authenticity, and it lets the conversation go both ways in real time. And I think that's the biggest thing that draws people in, because like when you think of, a lot of times I look at my phone, I'm like, phones have made us into stimulation-seeking organisms far more so than any other thing that's touched our species in the last several, probably millennia. So like we get notifications all day long. Like what makes you open any given app on your phone? Usually you have the priority stack in your mind of like, if I get an email, maybe that's the highest priority, or if I get an OkCupid message, maybe that's the highest, because I never get OkCupid messages. In the case of live video, if the person that I'm attracted to and have maybe engaged with before is now performing live, like that can be like the strongest form of stimulation, because it's like, oh, like something's happening now. It will not exist. It does not save. Like I have to go in now. And so it gives that additional pull that like if they just uploaded a video, you'd be like, okay, I can check that later, whatever. I'm not going into the app. Live video is like you have to go in now. So I think that's what makes the difference.
And they're monetizing the live video how the same way like Musical.ly is, or Lively, or you now?
Yeah, I think it's similar in that you can pay to engage with the content. So like if you want to be like part of their chat thread, you could maybe like either be a subscriber, or you have to like get a certain number of tokens. I think there's still a lot of creativity to be had in terms of like how you charge for live video services. Sometimes it's just like a user wants to send you a gift or some sort of thing, and in order to do that, they have to pay the app store or the whatever store you embed in your app in order to get them to like translate their desire to interact with this person through currency. Like they can tip them, they can, and the tipping is like, that's the most common. It's just like, I want to acknowledge that I like what you're doing. I'm going to give you either a thumbs up, which like I know I think Facebook Live lets you do, or if you want to monetize that, it's like you can have me give you actual dollars when you do cool things. And you can even have people say, if you guys donate $20 through tips, I'll do this thing, whatever that thing is, who knows. That's much more commonly the case in like webcam shows. I don't yet know the full scope of what can be done when it comes to just like day-to-day dating apps. I'm not on most of those Chinese apps because I can't even read what's happening, which is unfortunate because I feel like I really want to see it properly implemented here in English, because I just feel like there's a lot of potential for what can happen.
Actually, in China, those live stream apps, actually, like the government, they control it very strictly.
Really? Oh,
yeah.
Is that because they're afraid of like one user with multi-million? Oh, is the porn thing?
Yeah, porn like this. And last week, there is one Chinese lesbian apps, dating apps.
Rayla.
Rayla. It has been removed by App Store. So, and the main point is seems it's right now it's very difficult to control the quality of the live stream.
Yeah.
Like for example, in China, I don't know in US, okay, like you can use live stream for anything, but in China, if it's found that there is any porn or any other thing like that, then the government will abandon your apps or your service. So in China right now, you see most of the live stream apps, it is for overseas market, not in Chinese market. Even in Chinese market right now, there are many troubles for me. So it's very, I think it's a long time to cover everything.
Yeah. So like I guess just moderation is really hard because normally, as a dating app, like there's almost every conference you'll see people from the moderation world come in and say like, dude, you guys are going to need us because the minute your users start uploading dick pics as their main profile photo, your app will get banned from the App Store, and that's in the US as well as any other country. So you have to be really careful about that. So moderation is important, and live video is one of the hardest things to moderate because how do you control for what's going to happen immediately? Like you can always filter a still photo through an image recognition thing. Although I think that what was the one? Not Chatterbait. The one that lets you. The one that was like famous for all the dick pics or the dick videos. Chat Roulette. I think that they do have like automatic dick detection. That is like someone built that technology, and so now it can happen, and you can apply it to like a real-time thing, so that you can immediately notice when you need to take someone offline because they're doing something that's porn-related.
That's is it for the live video? I don't think it's good for online dating because online dating is for the one-to-one, right? But the live videos is for the just like broadcasting and that, right? So if I'm doing the live show right now, so there are many fans or many users. They will come to the room and watch my show or watch my live show. But these things nothing related to dating.
But the important thing there is, we mentioned, was it like 20% of users actually meet up? What do you do with the other 80%? Because you can monetize them, and that's where the live streaming comes in. Because these users, maybe they'll just never meet someone because they're so bad at dating, and it's going to be another couple of years before they know what they're doing. So yeah, they're going on. Like they still want to get some sort of entertainment or some value from that experience. And if no one's going to reply to their messages because they're terrible, or no one just finds them attractive, then what do you do next? Like you can at least subscribe to the channels of people that you are attracted to and still live out that fantasy. Like a lot of the foreign bride services, like some of those are just for living out a fantasy. Like you're never actually going to get a foreign bride, but you do get to have the feeling of it, and you get to have them message you with all these wonderful poems saying like, oh, how wonderful would it be if we lived, like you're selling a fantasy in a lot of these cases, and users are willing to pay for it, even if they don't ultimately succeed or meet up. I think it is a judgment call when you're building, like whether or not you want to make that the focus, whether you want to even incorporate it, because it does require an additional level of moderation that can be costly. And it may just, if you're Eve Peters building an app for meeting people immediately, you don't want live streaming, because that's not, unless you have them like live streaming, hey, I'm in this park, someone come meet me. But I will say, every app I've ever seen that does the broadcasts, like real-time broadcasts of what you're doing, had to remove that feature because users, like, there'll be like a cute 18-year-old girl saying, hey, I really want weed, can someone come bring me weed? I'm standing right here. And then, sure enough, it becomes an immediate funnel for drug trafficking and things like that. So like I know that Tinder, I think, or OkCupid used to have that back in like 2012, 2013, and they had to take it down for that reason. And a number of other apps that have launched it had to remove it within a year, usually because users quickly realize, oh, I can get drugs this way, this is great. And so you got to be careful. And also like the cam models will be like, oh, I can just like let everyone know that I'm doing my show right now. That's awesome. So like the point to multi-point conversation and communication can be really dangerous when users quickly realize that they can use your service for nefarious purposes. So you got to be careful there. Just want to get through. We're almost near the end of this now. So what's that? I know, but I know I don't want to overdo it for everyone because. And there will be plenty of time for Q&A as well. I don't know if anyone's tried any VR dating experiences. Like the VR market, I think it's been growing. Last year, I want to say it was like 18,000%. It's completely insane in terms of like how much growth there is in VR right now, and yet the content is non-existent. There's been so little actual content put forth, even as like we're investing in the hardware, investing in software, but like the actual content producers, it's just like to get a proper rig and do 360 filming and stuff to set up a VR experience can cost you $10,000 just for the hardware, and then another however much for the production budget to get something off the ground. The average game, if you want to build a VR game, I think it costs it's like minimum $1 million to do all the different things necessary to actually like build a fully, like if you want like a good quality game, because it's like you can build a crap quality thing, on your own, but it's still like to get a VR ready machine, it's going to cost a lot. To do all of the production and all the licensing to like make the game it's really hard. So in the dating industry, we haven't seen much other than just like little spoof things of what dating in VR would be like. But when you think about it, there is a huge future for dating in VR, because all of the people who won't get off their asses in order to go out and meet someone will probably put on a VR headset in order to engage digitally. And all of the women who are really creeped out by just seeing a photo of someone and not knowing if it's real would likely be able to go in and actually interact with that person without ever having to forfeit their own security. So it does pose a lot of opportunities for the industry because of the capacity to make women feel safer, make them feel more capable of just like unplugging if the person is not who they said they were or is not someone that they actually want to engage with. They don't have to waste their time scheduling and going out for coffee and messaging about coffee or drinks, only to then realize within 10 seconds, oh God, this person sucks. Why am I here? How do I get out of this? Do I have any good social scripts for leaving? There's the Irish exit. There's a lot of different things we already coined as a society for like ways of leaving a shitty date. But like the fact of that just means that like VR has a huge potential to make it so we don't have to suffer as much with all of the current flaws inherent in the dating ecosystem.
So just jump on the VR thing.
Yeah.
I went to, because I have a lot of iPhone games and whatnot that have done decent, and I went to GDC, Game Developers Conference in 2015. There were maybe 5% was VR. I mean, you would have to search the entire, like there was one on this side, the far side of the hall over there, and maybe one, the little piece of the booth in the main hall. That was last year. I went this year. 85% of it was VR. Like it went from what's VR to everything is almost VR. It was almost impossible to walk 5 feet without seeing someone with a headphone on or some sort of thing. And like there were just set of booths where there's nothing in the booth, but you put on the goggle. I mean, not the goggles, but the headsets, and you had the guns you ran around with. But everything was going VR. Like if you're not in VR, like if you have nothing, and I'm mobile, so I'm not doing necessarily VR. But what you said in terms of stuff being crappy, for the first 4 weeks of this, from Christmas Day to 5 weeks after, it was all, for the most part, for the 10 trending apps. I mean, 4 of the 10 trending searches on the App Store were VR games, VR apps, and then a couple other VR words like Google Cardboard and something else in VR for the first month, and then still since then it props up. So it's all going VR. Like I don't want to date what you're saying here, but still, just in general, in terms of people getting used to wearing headsets, which a year from now it's going to be, I don't know about commonplace, but considering how the different industries that I'm part of have gone from nothing to almost overnight, 100%, not 100, but 85% a year later. Yeah. Next year it's going to be mind-blowing.
I'd say there's two really important things to just keep in mind about VR. One, and this is the most important, it's just attention. So imagine you have a TV in a room. How much of your attention does that get? Even the best movie in the world, if something happens on the side, you'll look at it. If like an ant or like a rodent runs across the room, your attention goes that way. Because you're still in a context in which if there's just a screen on the wall or a screen in front of you or a screen in your hand, your attention, which is like your ability to focus, that energy, is always confined to, it wants to be confined to the screen, but it always goes elsewhere. In VR, it completely occupies your entire attentional bandwidth. So the cool thing about VR from a engagement perspective, from even an advertising perspective, is that when someone's in VR, you own their attention. Nothing else can exist in their world. And a lot of times people will literally like run into walls when they're wearing the headset. They'll trip over themselves because their attention is living in VR. And like from a like just biochemical standpoint, your brain does not know the difference between what it sees in VR and what it considers to be real. And so there's a couple new experiential things where like they'll light a match in front of your nose as they're showing you like a fire in VR, and you get really scared, and like your heart rate will start freaking out because suddenly like your body goes into panic mode. There's also games that let you control time in VR, and those are really dangerous because if you feel like it teaches your body that like real life now is where I can control time. And so when you take the headset off and suddenly you can't do that anymore, like the world gets really difficult for a few minutes. And so like VR just has so much power in terms of how it captures human attention. And I mean, VR in dating is really powerful because like imagine you want to take someone to the best possible scenic location in the world, but like the cost of that would be $10,000. You can do it in VR for probably $10, you know, if you have the headset, because, you know, and you can like literally take someone from another dating app, both go into VR, link, and then have it, you both teleport to whatever location you choose. So you can go on virtual dates instantly at near zero cost. All you need is the headset. And that brings me to the second point, which is the headsets. Ideally, I mean, we already see that like Google and Apple, I think, have patents on contact lenses that can do the same thing that a VR headset can do, just with much lower power. It's not going to be out for another several years before we can actually have that being like consumer-facing ready. But you know, like we are confined to headsets for the time being. But even like next year, I'm expecting the cords that are currently strapped to the VR headsets to disappear. I know the Vive, which is one of the two most popular VR apparatuses for, you know, just letting users engage. I think they already have a wireless model. It's just like it's not great yet for tracking. There's a lot of challenges that VR still has to overcome in terms of like the setup. You still require like a room scale, little light boxes that detect your movement. It's just a lot of crap. And you need to have like, the actual physical weight of a VR setup can be over 100 pounds. And so like to transport that to get the average user to like start engaging, like we're not there yet. And like the Google Cardboard, the difference between VR with a Vive or an Oculus Rift versus a Google Cardboard or a Samsung Gear. I don't know if these are familiar terms for anyone right now, but there's like two very different camps of VR. One is to just like put something on your face and it covers your eyes, and then the experience is in like 360, but you can't do anything. You're confined to whatever the creator of that experience in particular that you loaded on wants you to have, and so you can just like look around, but that's it. And then there's the Oculus and the Vive, which are, you get like these joysticks and paddles, which actually let you interact with your environment around you. So imagine the difference between like going to a museum and just being able to look at paintings versus actually being able to paint. It's a completely different world. And one of the ones that use the paddles and joysticks allow you to unlock human creative potential. And you can create entirely new economies around that because a user who's creating new like decals in Paint, like the VR version of Paint, can just like ship those out to a store where other people can say, hey, I want that, and they buy that and put that in their experiences. But yeah, there's, in terms of dating in VR, where we are, it's just there's a long way to go, but there's a lot of upside. Like the sheer magnitude of like the change year over year in terms of what we're seeing, what new hardware is coming out, has been really powerful. And the computing power, that's like one of the biggest things in VR. You just need powerful computers to do it right. We're going to get there. I'd say we still have a couple years to like, you have a lot of first mover advantage capacity right now, but the actual distribution is still low because right now it costs you $1,000 for an Oculus Rift with the handsets and another $3,000 for a PC that can actually power it. So what user is going to spend $4,000 on a VR console other than hardcore gamers, right? So in terms of dating, just keep it in your mind as like, if you want to get really easy media attention, say VR. But in terms of the actual implementation, it's not yet something you should really add as a core facet of your experience. But AI is a different story. And like, there's a lot of marriages between AI and VR because the AI lets you do a lot better computing that can empower your VR environments. But I think the coolest thing about AI is that it makes it so like anything that you would otherwise want to do that is rote or mechanical or just redundant, those hey, what's up, your AI can do that for you. So like it makes it so there's a lot of, and like I said before, like your bots can do those kinds of things. A lot of these bots have AI built into them to make them more intelligent. So like just an easy example of what AI can do is like you can make it almost like a series of if-then statements. If a user says something that includes the phrase, hey, what's up? Then you reply with, you're an idiot. And then you can create certain like catch-alls where if it has just hey, anything with the word hey followed by 2 words, it should intelligently reply with a different kind of message. So like AI is incredibly powerful in dating. It has been almost non-existent in terms of what the actual implementations have looked like. So that's where I want to like challenge everyone in the room who's building an app to like think about like how you can even just do like the baseline level of education for yourselves to understand like what the capacity you would gain would look like, and how much your users could benefit from you automating some of the tasks that they already find to be annoying. Look at the Bernie app just to get a sense of like how AI is implemented in the only current instance I've seen in the dating industry. I'm sure it's implemented more subtly in the back end sometimes, but in terms of like an app that actually says the words or the phrase AI as part of their marketing, I think Bernie's the only one I've seen. And now we get into wearable AI for dating, and this is a video. I'm not sure if I have sound. Do I have sound here, Mark? But this is probably, this video came out like 5 years ago. And it's one of like the scariest implementations of the combination like VR, AR, mixed reality, and AI that I've ever seen. But it feels like what the future likely will be. It's very Black Mirror-esque, if any of you follow that.
What's the name of that?
Bernie.
Bernie?
Bernie, B-E-R-N-I-E. Also, what browser do you use, Mark?
Firefox at the bottom.
Firefox.
Are you kidding me? Yeah. Give me a wire that's like 3 inches. Pre-plan this.
Yeah, and
I'm ready for this.
I mean, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I can send you all the link.
I have 2 options for you. You'll have it. One way or another.
We still need that security key for the network. This is always the most fun part of the presentation, of trying to get a video to actually play.
Are we connected with the internet? You need the password. Password is... No, I'm not. All right, it's SP. That's an L or a 1. SPL. All small letters. $. At. Yeah, it's in there. What do you call it? Exclamation point. Guest. GUSD. SPL underscore guest.
Is this for the network?
And I guess,
Yes.
yeah, go. Yeah, go ahead. Connect. Yeah. And then SPL, $. Guest. Yeah.
If it works.
Yeah, you're in. Give it a second. You might have to.
Yeah.
Let's see that.
We can also test the sound.
Yeah, it's on now. You're connected to it. Yeah, I was going to say this. So. Just something to go through.
There we go. Is your sound?
Oh, yeah, I got it. This is. I'll know right away it works. Don't worry. Right here. Beep, 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 beep. Hold on. Okay, so let me get sound.